up? This is a Google Hangout with Jason Pat. I'm Ricky O'Donnell. We're from bloggable.com, and we're going to be talking about the Chicago Bulls a few days ahead of the upcoming season. The Bulls are the first team to play a game in the new year. They're playing the Cavs on October 27th, so just a few days away.
1 week, exactly.
Jason, how are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm really pumped about Cavs Bulls starring Kirk Hinrich versus Mo Williams. It's going to be a thrilling opener.
What more can you ask for? That's the NBA excitement everyone's looking for. So, it seems like Rose is unlikely to play. Would you say that? I mean, it's still been pretty up in the air at this point, but.
Yeah, I mean, based on watching the game last night, they were showing him on the broadcast, warming up, whatever, before the game, just getting some shots up, and the dude still, can't open his eyes. He's got his mask on, he's shooting jumpers, but he's got one eye, half open. Another one is fine. And obviously they're keeping it still open that he still could play. I mean, right now, it seems like there's almost little reason to think that he will. I mean, with him, I guess you just never know. So I guess it's not looking good right now, and hopefully that changes.
All right, I think we can go straight to the questions, just because we got some good ones from Twitter. You guys can put them in the comments, or you can send them to us at Twitter, and we'll respond. So here's one from my boy Brian Lerve. Will the team stay on task defensively, sans Tibbs, and can Bobby Portis take some of the minutes burden away from the bigs? So for the first part, I think that's going to be one of the biggest storylines of the season, is how well do the Bulls defend in the first year without Tom Thibodeau. And the thing that I think everyone is going to conveniently forget, especially if the Bulls start off slow, is that the Bulls were 14 in defensive efficiency last year. Before that, every season under Thibodeau, they'd been a top 5 defensive team. That's just not the case anymore. Last year, they really slipped. I think, there's 2 reasons for it specifically. One is Pau Gasol playing 34 minutes a game. He's not a quality defender by any stretch, and having someone that old, that slow, playing such a significant portion of minutes was going to sink the defense regardless. Then the other one, obviously, is just Joakim Noah's free fall from a guy who won Defensive Player of the Year, finished 4th in MVP voting 2 years ago, to someone who, against the Cleveland Cavaliers, he was a liability on the floor. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. He wasn't helping the team whatsoever last season. So, Jason, how do you think the defense is going to be? I know that up to this point in the preseason, it hasn't looked great, but I don't want to take, put too much stock into that. So, sort of, what do you expect out of the Bulls defensively this year, and how do you think they can do without Thibodeau?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, as you said, it's going to be one of the big questions to ask. Was they even with Tibbs last year, they took a big fallback. I can't remember if they were 14th. They were definitely out of the top 10, first time ever under Tibbs. And this preseason, it is only preseason. You don't want to put too much predictive whatever into that, but they have not been very good at all. So from what I've seen, I haven't seen every minute of every game, but it hasn't been very good. And it's stuff we've talked about in the comments of Bloggable, stuff it's been written about at Bloggable. Just rotations aren't very good. There's not that much help from the big man. And even with Noah on the floor, and Noah's been looking a little better this preseason, the defense still hasn't played very well. So it's really going to be interesting to see how that all comes together, with Hoiberg has not really been known as a defensive coach. They do have Jim Boyle in there, who's a really well-respected assistant to help that. And I'm pretty sure they're still using a lot of the Tibbs defensive principles, either icing, or I think they call it blue pick and rolls now. Some weird terminology they use, but it's definitely going to be something to watch. And another thing is, with Mike Dunleavy isn't a great defender, but he's always been a solid team defender. We saw him struggle last year on that without Dunleavy, and now if Doug McDermott's going to get a ton of minutes, he just looks lost on the defensive end. Did you see the vine that Hungarian Jordan?
So funny.
Oh yeah, I mean, he basically ran around the court for 10 seconds, not guarding anybody. He was trying. You can never fault Doug for not trying. He's always trying, but right now he just is not there defensively. And I mean, there's only so much that Noah can do. There's only so much that Taj can do. Only so much that Jimmy can do. And we even saw Jimmy slip. So it could be a struggle on the defensive end this year. Hopefully they come together. They got a lot of time. But
yeah,
we'll definitely see.
Here's my thing with the defense, and I don't want to make the cross Chicago sport parallel too much, but just one thing that sort of sticks in my mind. Like, for the Bulls, were they a great defensive team at their peak because Thibodeau was a great defensive coach, or was it because they had a lot of great defensive talents? Guys like Luol Deng, he was one of the better wing defenders in the league. That first year when they had Gibson, Ashik, and Noah, three premier defensive talents. And I think that a lot of times when people are judging NBA players from afar, they put a ton of emphasis on offense and not much on defense. But to me, the Bulls had a lot of great individual defenders, and that was the main catalyst behind them being a great defensive team. Obviously, Thibodeau's schemes were sort of cutting edge. A lot of other NBA teams have copycatted them now to this point. That just sort of proves how good they were in the first place. But the thing that I look at the Bulls now and I'm just like, I don't know if the defensive talent level is as high as it was during Thibodeau's heyday. For one, we've mentioned it a couple times, but Noah's just simply not the same player anymore. Deng is gone. In his place, you have Jimmy Butler, who is an excellent defender, one of the best two-way players in the league. But Jimmy himself will even tell you his defense slipped a little bit last year. As he received a bigger burden offensively. So I think that's another thing to look at this year. Do the Bulls still have the personnel to be able to defend like a great team? To me, I really don't think they do. I think that if this team could be in the top half of the league defensively, that would probably mean pretty good things for them, because I think you can expect to see the offense take a pretty sizable jump. Defensively, if they can just stay where they're at. Anytime you're playing Powell a lot of minutes, Mirotic a lot of minutes, Doug McDermott a lot of minutes, those guys just don't have the ability to be good defenders, and I think that that's definitely something that could weigh the team and the defense down a bit this year.
Yeah, I mean, even look at Taj Gibson too. I mean, Taj has had all these injuries. He's starting to get up there in age, and I mean, a few years ago when Taj and Noah were just wrecking havoc on everybody, that helped the Bulls be great defensively. But I mean, we saw last year Taj was not as stout, and the Taj-Noah pairing, which used to be so good defensively, was atrocious last year. And so if those guys aren't playing at their peak, and you have those other weaker defenders with Pau, with Nico, Bobby Portis has looked. We talked about the question was about Bobby Portis. Like, he's looked pretty good with his energy, his rebounding, and his shooting, but he still has a long way to go defensively as well.
For sure. So, yeah, like Portis is going to be a good defender because Portis has the ability to be a good defender. Like, guys even Heinrich at this point, he's just too slow. He can't play defense. To be a good defender, you basically just have to be really big and really fast. And that's automatically eliminating like half the guys on the Bulls roster. And to transition this a little bit, it's one of the big questions I think about the Bulls in general this year. It was something that plagued them last year as well. I just don't think they have very many two-way players on the roster. Like, if you were going to give letter grades to the Bulls' best players in terms of offense and defense, like Noah, maybe he's a B-plus defender at this point, but offensively he's like an F. And Gasol is the same way, but in reverse. Offensively he's like an A. He's a terrific offensive player, but defensively, I don't know, he's a D- or a D. I'll give
him like a D because when he is protecting the rim and he's actually there, he can block shots. But his teams attack him in the pick and roll and he just doesn't have the foot speed anymore. And it's not really any fault of him, although sometimes there are times where he can be somewhat lazy, but he just doesn't have that lateral movement anymore.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, many times people want to chalk up defense to a combination of effort and scheme, but I think defense is as much a talent as offense is, in the sense that, like, if you're small and slow, or even one of those things, you're just not going to be able to defend. You need to have, in today's NBA, you really need to have a 7-foot wingspan. You need to be able to move like a wing no matter what position you're playing if you're going to be a lockdown defender. And I just look at this Bulls roster, and they're not super athletic anymore. Just they don't have a lot of two-way players, I think, and that's something to monitor as the season goes along. Let's take another question. This is from this is a big one. This is like the question of the season. So I'm going to throw it out to you, Jason. This comes from @ZW Martin, longtime fan of the blog. He says, can the Bulls beat the Cavs? And if no, what about this team should help distract me from that fact?
That's always the question. Can they beat LeBron? It's the Cavs again. I mean, Cavs have their own set of problems right now with all their injuries, with Tristan Thompson, whatever that is, holdout, whatever you want to call it. if they go into the playoffs, I mean, last year we thought the Bulls had a great chance to beat the Cavs. They didn't have Kevin Love. Kyrie Irving was basically a shell of himself when he did play. And the Bulls still got beat in 6 games and got beat pretty soundly in that game 6. It was awful. That's where the Rose Jimmy beef stuff came. So if we look ahead at this year, I mean, if it all comes together for the Bulls, they catch some breaks, and if whatever LeBron gets hurt or Love and Kyrie are out again, sure, maybe they can beat him. But I mean, basically, it's another situation where a lot has to go right. The talent is there with the Bulls. It just, you never know what you're going to get with Derrick Rose. We don't know if we've already talked about the defensive questions. Like, can the Bulls defense stop the Cavaliers when they're rolling, like, whatever, if they're going with Love, LeBron, Irving, and those other guys? Probably not. So that's a problem. Besides that, I don't know if there's anything else if you don't think they'll beat the Cavs, you just want to have some fun watching them. I guess just hope that Derek plays really well. Jimmy's a fun player. He's good. I don't know. Besides that, I don't know what else hope there is really besides just hope that they can beat the Cavs and hope everything comes together.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's just not healthy to be a sports fan and to look at every season as championship and bust, because then, like, the vast majority of your time is you're going to be miserable. You should do something better with your time than watch sports if the only thing you're living for.
I will say, I think Nico Mirotic, I was going to say, I think my hopes are high for him. He hasn't been that great in preseason. I think even if the Bulls don't lose the Cavs again, watching his development should be something really fun this year, the next few years. And then Doug, we talked about Doug's terrible defensively, but if he can be a fun player, make it rain from 3 some games and just get on fire, those will be some fun nights. Doug and Nico can really go off along with those other guys I mentioned.
The Bulls are in an interesting spot in the franchise history right now because it feels like a lot of the timelines on the current roster aren't really aligning. Like, you have the old guard like Derek, Joe, Taj. Those were really the backbone of the Thibodeau years. Now they're transitioning past that into the Hoiberg years, and it looks like the team, could be far more based around Jimmy Butler, Bobby Portis, maybe Doug McDermott. So, the timelines with the teams aren't really aligning. It's the first year you can really go into the season and you look at Joakim Noah, you look at Derrick Rose, and are those guys part of the Bulls' future anymore? I think what happens this year is going to determine a lot of that. But, you can't sit here anymore and say that Rose and Noah are long-term pieces, because Noah being a free agent after this season, I think that's a storyline, the most uncomfortable storyline of the year, really. Absolutely. Is that Joakim Noah is about to hit free agency in the NBA during a time when there's been more money in the league than ever before. NBA teams are going to have $1 billion in salary cap space to spend next summer. And if you look at the list of 2016 free agents, it's pretty shallow after Kevin Durant. Al Horford's the second best player, and then, Noah's name is up there in terms of veterans you could possibly acquire in free agency. So if Noah's playing 24 minutes in a contract year during a time when, if he can even show, 80% of what he did 2 years ago, I think he's looking at easy another $100 million in free agency. Or, is Hoiberg going to sit him and be like, this guy can't help the team as much as some of the other bigs on the squad already can? So I think that's really that's one of the biggest things the Bulls have hanging over them this year. Is like, everyone wants to talk about the Derek and Jimmy beef all summer and all these things, but for Noah, this is tangible. This is like money on the line. If he plays well, he's going to get another huge payday. And Joakim Noah does important things with his money too. You've seen all the charity work he does around the city, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So just building off that, what would you be comfortable paying Noah in free agency? Because he is 30, 31 now. He's had a long history of the lower body injuries. We haven't seen him how he's played this year yet. If he has a strong, if he comes back, he bounces back, has a good year, like, are you comfortable paying him near max money when, obviously with the cap going up, the near max money isn't quite as terrible, but do you want to, maybe give him a short-term deal, a 2 or 3 year deal?
Here's the thing, it doesn't matter. It's the same with Rose. People are always trying to gauge Rose's value in the future when he's got 2 seasons left on his contract. And these 2 seasons are going to determine how much he's getting paid. It's the exact same thing for Noah. For me, I don't expect Noah to age well because, for one, I mean, even when he has the peak of his powers, he was always pretty small for a center. I believe he was listed about 6'11", 235. That's definitely on the low end of size for NBA centers. Secondly, he was good because he was really quick. He was this guy who had sort of the agility of a guard within a center's frame, but now he's over 30 years old. He's had multiple injuries to his lower body the last few seasons. He's also played a ridiculous number of minutes under Tom Thibodeau. So all of that combines to sort of sap your athleticism. And we saw last year, especially against the Cavs, Noah was throwing up shots that would hit parts of the backboard no one has ever hit in an NBA game before. He was hitting like the corner of the backboard 3 feet away from the hoop. The dude's throwing up prayers. So that's because he just didn't have the burst. We saw last year he didn't dunk too much. Even yesterday in the Bulls preseason game against the Charlotte Hornets, I saw Noah get rejected by the rim on a dunk. That's just really sad to see. So to me, the Bulls are definitely in a position to move on from Noah. Noah's one of my favorite Chicago athletes of my lifetime, no doubt about it. He is one of the joys of this world as far as I'm concerned. But, I mean, basketball's a young man's game. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, he's not a young man in basketball terms anymore. He's got a lot of mileage on those wheels. So I think that, the Bulls would be in position to likely move on from Noah after this year, but we'll see. I mean, if he bounces back, certainly there's a lot of sentimentality tied to Noah as well, so impossible to say.
Yeah, I know people have talked about one of the counters to, well, don't give Noah the money. Well, he means so much in the locker room. He's such a leader. I mean, I get that as well, but there's definitely a point where you're like, we can only pay so much for a locker room leadership guy, and if he can't produce on the court, you just can't give him that money. And I mean, he's looked a little better this preseason in terms of, I guess, his, what do they call him, his like bounciness, his jumpiness. He's still shooting. I looked it up. He's shooting 6 for 26 from the field. He got to the line 15 times yesterday. That was nice. Still only made 8 of those free throws. And like as you mentioned with the series last year, the offense he went from being a versatile offensive center, as a guy who could handle the ball, who could pass, to a guy that teams just didn't guard. Either they wouldn't guard him. The Bucks used Jared Dudley to guard him, and it didn't hurt them because he just wasn't a threat. So, I mean, Noah doesn't have to be a guy that, I mean, his point Noah is whatever. That doesn't have to be a thing anymore. He's just got to be a guy that's got to be a competent offensive threat. And if he can at least get back somewhat on defense, hopefully he can bounce back. And then, again, you get to the point where hopefully you try to get something done with him in terms of a deal. I think a short-term deal, maybe short-term money that's a little higher on the per year or whatever annually, I could probably live with that. I definitely don't want to give him long-term money at this point unless he just has like a huge year, and even then it's debatable.
Yeah.
Here's the question. If the season is not going very well, I don't want to like panic or anything, but would you even consider trading him if you can get something
for
decent
sure
in value?
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. First of all, he's an expiring contract. So that's I don't know. Are you going to just give him away? Like, could you get a first-round pick for him? Then
I'm not just salary dumping. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is that, like, people see the Bulls sort of glut of bigs, and they always want to make a move. They're like, oh, we got to free up playing time for Portis or whoever else. Like, I don't think you really need to make a move because, guys are going to get hurt, especially we're talking about Gibson, Noah, and Powell. Like, they all had I believe 30. Is Gibson 30 yet? I believe he is.
Close. I mean, he came into the league at 24, and that was in 2009. So he's either right there.
They're all 30 plus. They all have a long history of injuries. So I'm going to take 2 more questions here, and they're sort of tied together. At Very Important wants to know, can Fred coach him in the paint? Can their minutes be restrained? And then Jake Wiener he writes for your site, doesn't he?
He does.
He said which bigs will close out games. So those 2 sort of go along together. Do you have any thoughts on the front court rotation this year? What do you think the Bulls' best chance of winning in the front court will be? And sort of how do you see the minutes shaking out this year?
Yeah, I mean, with the depth they do have, you would hope that the minutes are going to be spread out nicely. Howe should not be playing 34 minutes a game. Nico should be playing more than last year. it is hard if we look at a guy like Portis. I don't know. He'll probably get on the floor if there's injuries. It'll be hard to get him minutes without them going to the 3 big lineup. And I will say right now, I do not want the 3 big lineup at all. We saw it last year. We saw it in the preseason game. Fred tried it out, and it was just a disaster, and he went away from it. It just using Mirotic to the 3 takes away from what he does best as a stretch 4, especially in Hoiberg's offense. That makes no sense. In terms of the starting lineup, I know Casey Johnson wrote an article saying Gasol's a lock to start. That's not surprising. So that means it's either Noah at the 4 again, or Nico, or Taj. I have no idea who's going to – I mean, no, Pau and Nico does not seem like an ideal defensive front court. Taj would probably make some sense, but then I'd rather have Nico start just because it seems like he's perfect for Fred's offense. So you look at this, it's just kind of like a mess. I feel like the pairings that make the most sense are Noah and Mirotic, and then Gasol and Gibson, because that's just the offense-defense trade-off that you have for both of them. But then I don't really know how you work that out. If Pau's going to start for sure, I mean, do you just start Gibson? If you close games, I feel like for the closing, if we're going to talk about the closing aspect, which is more important than who starts, who closes is more important than who starts games. I guess that could just be like a game-by-game thing. I don't know if they're going to go with a set like these 2 guys are going to close. Like if they need offense, you'll probably have Mirotic and Pau out there. If you need to shut teams down, maybe they go Nico and Noah, or maybe if the Noah-Gibson duo can find that rhythm again. I mean, I don't know. But it is tough. It is nice to have so many good players in the front court, but then it causes problems like this, trying to figure out how to mix and match it. So it's tough to answer.
Yeah, I don't know as well. My guess is that Hoiberg's going to want Mirotic in there as much as possible because, for one, like, and this is something else we talk about with Mirotic in general, but like he has yet to proven he's actually a good shooter. He has a reputation as a shooter, but he hasn't actually shot the basketball very well. I want to say last year he hit 31% of his threes. This year in the preseason, coming into last night, he was hitting 28%. Now I know he went 3 for 6 last night. I don't have the numbers offhand, so I can't tell you shooting. And then in Spain's FIBA tournament, where the line's a little closer, he hit 35.5%. So again, like, that's decent, but with a closer line, you would expect him to be a little better. I think Mirotic's shooting is extremely pivotal for this team. He needs to be closer to 40% than he is to 30%. But even when he's not making his shots, he still adds so much value to the team just in the fact that people respect him as a shooter. And they'll close out on him, and it just opens up space for everyone else in the half court. So because of that, I think that, Mirotic, whether he's as good of a three-point shooter as we were hoping he would be, or if he isn't, just his presence on the court helps the Bulls a lot in terms of opening up driving lanes for Rose and Jimmy. And I think that because of that, he's going to be on the court quite a bit. To me, I would like to see Pau come off the bench. I know that you can't do it. You can't do it for whatever reason. The other thing too is that Pau can opt out of his deal at $7 million a year next year. He had such a monstrous year last year. All this money's coming into the league. Pau's definitely going to opt out of his deal. So I wouldn't really worry about hurting his feelings this year. Like, I know that this is always a big concern. Pau's such a nice guy. Everyone likes him so much that, you don't want to like bruise his ego a little bit. But that's probably the dumbest rationale I've ever heard. Like, he's an adult. He's 35 years old. He enjoys the opera. You can be mean to him if you need to, as long as it's fair. And I think Pau would eat up second units.
Oh, my God. Like I said, him and Taj together, I was telling, Nate Duncan this. I tweeted at him. He had tweeted about the front court rotation yesterday with that KC article. Pau and Taj would murder second units. I mean, it'd be great. We kind of talked about that even with Boozer. Obviously, Pau's much better than Boozer, but about how bringing Boozer off the bench would have made so much sense because he could just kill bum slay second units. And Pau could absolutely do the same thing. His defense wouldn't be as big of a problem against second units, and with Taj there helping him out. But at this point, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. If Pau's still going to bring all that offense, it could still be fine. But I mean, if they start Pau and Nico, and that could be really tough defensively. Especially if Jimmy's still going to be counted on so much for his offense, if he's not up to speed on D. And I mean, Tony Snell is theoretically could be a good defender. I'm losing faith in Tony Snell by the day. He just doesn't do anything. There's so many times I forget that he's on the court. So if you're looking at those two in the front court and then some other question marks, and that could be rough on the defense.
Here's my quick thing on Snell. Especially if you're going to start Mirotic, you're going to have Rose, Butler, and Mirotic all on the court at the same time. All three of those guys are high-volume offensive players. They're all going to have a really high usage rate. So in that 3 spot, linking those 3 guys together, you want someone who can affect the game without needing the ball in their hands. And that's why I like Snell as a starter potentially for the Bulls this year. Last year, he hit 37.5% of his three-pointers, I believe. I think he took just over 2.5 attempts a game. Again, increase the volume. Shoot 5 of them if you're making 38% of them, you know?
And he's just really got to find the consistency.
Yeah, he's also he's more athletic than Doug for sure, or Dunleavy. He's got a 7-foot wingspan. He's got young legs. I think you got to trust Snell. Like Thibodeau would scold him so bad that I think Snell would get gun shy a little bit. He has the tools to be a fine 3-and-D spot-up guy. Like, is he going to be a star? No. Can he handle minutes when you're surrounding him by 3 high-usage guys in Rose, Butler, Mirotic? I don't see any reason why not, because he's really put in a position to succeed, especially with the space floor this year, with the increased tempo this year. I think it's a major opportunity for him, and I think that, you know, he should be able to handle it.
Yeah, I'm not giving up. It seems like there's way too much where he just like disappears. Like I said, he doesn't really have to do that much. If he can just hit open threes, and he should get plenty of looks and then play solid defense, that is totally fine. Hopefully he can find that consistency because he did shoot 37% from 3. It was basically because of that one month where he just killed it and shot like whatever he shot, 60% from 3, and the rest of the year it was a disaster. So hopefully playing with those guys, playing off those other guys, he can find a little more consistency. And it doesn't have to be a stud. Just be confident both ends of the floor. And hopefully, because I know Fred already talked about how he wants Snell taking some of the tougher defensive assignments because to alleviate some of that burden off Jimmy. So hopefully that he will embrace that opportunity and make things happen. So I'm losing some faith in him. I'm not going to give up on him yet. This is definitely going to be a huge year for him.
Here's another good question from Will Gottlieb, who says, in your estimation, what will Derek's numbers be and how many games will he play? So I'm going to throw this one out to you at Bulls J. D Rose last year in an 82-game season played 51 games. If I were to say 65 this year, would you take the over or the under?
I have no idea how many games he's going to miss to start this year. I can't imagine he'll be at that long.
That's hard.
That's 65 is a pretty good number. I would guess in the 60s. I mean, maybe I'll be optimistic and say over, just because this injury right now is like a freak thing, and hopefully it won't bother him. I mean, obviously he deals with a bunch of other stuff. I don't think he'd go over 70, so I will go maybe in the high 60s. He'll probably miss some games here and there, as long as he doesn't have another huge injury. So I would say maybe in the high 60s would be a reasonably optimistic number for him. I guess. I don't know. I mean, who knows him anymore? There's so many questions. I don't know.
For sure. I got a lot of thoughts on D Rose. If he could play 70 games, I'd be thrilled. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. Like I said, high 60s. I think is a really great. That'd be great. That'd be a very optimistic number. If you can get to that level, get to 70, that'd be awesome. Huge. And if he's ready by the playoffs, obviously, as long as he's ready for the playoffs, 70 games ready for the playoffs, sounds great. Let's roll with that.
Yeah. Secondly, I consider myself a D Rose optimist in the sense that I still think he's talented enough to be an effective NBA player. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
He still has the quickness. He still has the agility. He still has the sense of timing on pick and rolls, the way he's able to get off his shot from impossible angles. He can still do all of that. Yeah, right, for sure. The reason Rose wasn't an effective player last year, and if you look at his numbers, he really was not effective at all, is that he didn't play a smart version of his own game. I think that D Rose needs to reinvent himself a little bit, as all the great players in NBA history have in the past. I think that looking at the makeup of this roster, that means that he should be more of a facilitator this year. D Rose he'll talk about it. He'll talk about wanting to be more of a facilitator, but he still jacked 5.8 3-pointers a game and a 28% last year.
Cannot happen.
That just can't happen. Absolutely not. And I think that with a more spaced floor with Mirotic out there, life is should theoretically just be so much easier for Derek this season. The Bulls have done a lot in this preseason already, trying to get guys moving into their pick and rolls. I feel like that's going to be sort of like one of the themes throughout the league this whole year. Moving into your pick and rolls, kicking them out for threes, a really real drive and kick based offense. With Rose at the controls, the Bulls have the personnel to play that type of style, no doubt about it. Last year, the problem was their point guard sabotaged them by taking too many bad shots. I still think, though, that I'm pessimistic about Noah because I don't think he has the physical ability to still be a good player anymore. I'm optimistic about Rose because I do think he still has the physical ability to be a good player. And Thibodeau, for this reputation he had as such a drill sergeant and one of the toughest coaches in the NBA, he also sort of babied Rose. He made a lot of excuses for Rose. And last year, being Rose's first full year back, I think, for us, we were just really looking to see what Derek could do. Could he make it through a full season? Well, yeah, he finally made it to the finish line, but he had to stop for a torn meniscus surgery once again in that year. This year, with 2 years left, I really think this is the year of tough love for D Rose. I say this is one of D Rose's biggest fans throughout the year. Because I'm not going to worry about like the stupid off-court controversies. Obviously, the civil suit allegations are far more serious than that. But some of the oddball quotes he says to the media, I really don't care about that. I'm not concerned about that whatsoever. I just want him to play well. I think
we have the hashtag.
Yeah,
I think we have the hashtag Derek Rose says stuff for a reason. Like he says silly stuff. People always make a big deal out of it. Just don't pay attention to what he says. Like I know some people will always make a deal about it, but if you're a Bulls fan, it's like Derek's going to say what he says. If he plays really well, none of it matters at all. Like, I mean, he's like a free agency comment. Like, for what we know about him as a competitor, maybe he is thinking about that. Whatever, that's fine for him. But we know he's always wanted to win. He's always worked really hard to come back from these injuries. So it's not. I don't think we have to worry about him just like not working hard and not trying to do what he can to win a championship. Like whatever. People are going to say that. People are going to talk about beefs with Jimmy Butler. It doesn't matter if they find a way to play well together, and that's ultimately what's most important for him. If he's just going to play well on the court, all the stupid stuff he says doesn't matter.
Yeah, so my rule with Rose is he gets 2 threes. That's what I would say. Like, dude, even when you were at the height of your powers, what was he, a 33% three-point shooter? You were a great player, and you were never even a good shooter. You were never really an average shooter. I just wouldn't let him shoot threes this year. That's the rule. Everyone else can surround him with Jimmy, Nico, Snell on the three-point line, maybe even Portis spotting up from three.
Yeah,
Portis gets some minutes at the 5. Yeah. Derek, just get into the lane, either kick out to someone or take a mid-range shot because the three-pointer just has never been your strength, even when he was a great player.
I think Go ahead.
And the other thing, too, to transition this a little bit to one of the next questions, is that, because the Bulls are in this position where backup point guard is probably the weakest spot on the entire team, They not only need Rose to play at a high level for the team to reach its ceiling, they need him to play a lot of games as well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about E'Twaun Moore, who's gotten a few spot starts here in the preseason. What do you think of Moore? Do you think Moore will be the primary backup point guard to Rose this year? Do you think it's more of a point guard by committee with Heinrich and Brooks? And just what are sort of your thoughts on the Bulls' backup point guard situation?
I mean, E'Twaun seems like a solid player. He doesn't really make a lot of bad mistakes. He's like a decent defender. He had the huge game against the Thunder last year, and he's done some nice things in preseason. I mean, he's basically just a guy, and that's fine for probably the regular season. I definitely am worried about postseason. Obviously, Rose, if he's healthy, will play a lot of minutes in the postseason. But that even happened last year, and then when Rose went to the bench last year, it just all went to crap. I feel like with Brooks, it might be a thing where if he's got it going offensively, he gets hot, he'll have a longer release and stay out there. But if he's really struggling, there's no reason to keep him on the floor because he can't defend anybody. So I feel like in a situation like that, Moore will get more minutes. You know my thoughts on Kirk Hinrich. I know your thoughts on Kirk Hinrich. He's not very good anymore. He's old. I mean, I used to be a fan of Kirk. I haven't been for the last few years because he just doesn't have it anymore. He gets hurt all the time. He can't defend like he once can. He's way too streaky of a shooter. I would hope he sees the floor as little as possible. I don't think he has to be completely relegated to the end of the bench. If Kirk can give the Bulls 5 to 10 decent minutes every night, occasionally have a throwback game. I think that's really what the most we can expect out of him. So, I mean, besides that, I mean, it almost does seem like Moore would be the best bet for a safe choice for the backup point guard spot, and then the other guys, Brooks and Kirk, get some spot minutes in there, and Brooks gets maybe a little more if he's really going offensively. We talked about it in the offseason that was a spot where I really wish the Bulls would have looked to upgrade. We saw a guy yesterday, Jeremy Lin, got, I think, less money that Brooks did, and Lin, I think, has played pretty well so far. That haircut's freaking terrible, but, I mean, it's interesting that the Bulls did not for all we know, they could have made a stronger effort at guys. We'll never know stuff like that. It's disappointing that they didn't. Hopefully it does not hurt them too much. And especially if Rose does get hurt, he has huge problems.
Yeah, I want to see E'Twaun get the chance. First of all, he has the physical abilities that Brooks doesn't have in a sense because he's a 6'4", 200-pound guard. So just that alone tells you that he's going to be able to defend, you would think. He's still pretty athletic. He's also in the prime of his career. He's 26 years old. Guys forget, but he was a great player in the Big Ten. He averaged
he killed 13, Illinois all the time.
He averaged 13 points or more in all 4 years of his time at Purdue. He averaged 18 his last year at Purdue. So he's a guy who I threw this out on Twitter, but I would like to see him reinvent himself as a Patrick Beverley type of player. Beverley was another journeyman point guard. What does Beverley do? He D's up and he hits spot-up threes. Yeah. He moves the ball. He knows his role. I think that Moore should be able to do all those things, and then maybe you get the extra bonus of Moore being a little craftier scorer than Beverley is, having a little more shake to his game, being able to take people off the dribble a little bit from all his years as a two-guard. So, especially with Jimmy willing and ready to take a bigger role in terms of initiating the offense out of pick and rolls, I don't think that Moore really has to do any of that. He just has to move the ball, make his cuts, run to a spot. If he gets an open three, hit it, and then defend on the other end. Like, the game, sometimes you can make the game easy for yourself or you can make the game hard for yourself. And this year, I think that if the Bulls play their cards right under Hoiberg, there's several players on the roster who could stand to benefit from the game just being easier by putting them in a role suited to their talents. And E'Twaun Moore is one of those players, I think.
Yeah, I mean, even that's kind of like a couple years ago when we would make fun of like Kirk for like, oh, he can run the offense well. A few years ago, Kirk, as much as I give him crap, he was decent at running the offense when he was playing a lot of minutes for Rose. So if E'Twaun can even just do that, what is that? Are you giving me thumbs down for giving some positive to Kirk, even though I still thought he was terrible? He was decent at it. I'll give him that. So E'Twaun can do that, like you said, and kind of run the offense and hit some open threes and play solid defense. And hopefully we can get that out of him, and that would be huge because, like I said, the playoffs last year when Rose was off the court and it was Brooks and Kirk out there, it was a damn dumpster fire. Hopefully that does not happen again.
All right. Hayden Anderson asks, do you think the Bulls should consider trading Taj Gibson for a more competent backup point guard rather than a wing, as most suggest? So this is going to come with the added caveat. Anytime we're talking about a hypothetical trade of, I don't know what the Bulls could get for Taj Gibson. I assume, it's my guess, that the Bulls could not get a player better than Taj Gibson for Taj Gibson. And I went over this a bit earlier, but like, you know how we were grading Bulls offense and defense and no one's good at both, right? Taj is the one guy. He's pretty good at both. He might be a B on offense and an A- on defense, something like that. Just having that level of competency on both ends of the floor, I think, is invaluable. The other thing is, if you watch basketball at any level, this could be college basketball, NBA basketball, whatever, if you don't have interior defense, your team is going to get fucking smoked every single time. I'm thinking back to Duke versus Mercer 2 years ago when Duke had Jabari. Jabari was like playing center alongside of Neil Jefferson that year, and it was a layup line for Mercer. Mercer was not the more talented team. The problem was that Duke could not protect the paint at all. I'm saying this because Nikola Mirotic and Pau Gasol really are not interior defenders. That is for sure the weak part of their game. So with Taj, I feel like if you let him go, everything could come crashing and burning, similar to what happened to the Knicks a couple of years ago when Tyson Chandler got hurt. They didn't have anyone who could protect the paint, sank their whole defense. I think you need Gibson's defensive abilities on the interior for sure on this team, especially when he's still got 2 years under contract for $8 million, very reasonable contract. And Noah might be off the team after this year as Mike Gasol holding that player option. So I would keep Gibson. Again, the caveat, could you get something for him? Like if the Raptors offered me Terrence Ross for him today, I don't know. Maybe I would take it. I'm not sure. But I very much doubt that the Bulls can find a player better than Taj Gibson in exchange for Taj Gibson. That's my 2 cents.
That's definitely the tough thing, especially with where the Bulls are as a team. Like we kind of talk about how they're like rosters imbalanced about like where they are in terms of like their timeline. So like the Bulls, if the Bulls were in a spot where they didn't think themselves title contenders, you have all your big men, and you have Bobby Portis kind of whatever. You want to get him playing time, you trade Taj, and it's fine. But if you're trying to win a title this season, Taj Gibson will probably play a big role in helping you if you want to do that. And I mean, it was just 2 years ago in the playoffs when Taj Gibson was the Bulls' best player.
Right. People forget that.
When he murdered the Wizards, he put up like 19 and 7. He shot like 57% from the field, and that was just less than 2 years ago. Taj is a really good player when he's healthy. Obviously, the health thing. He's got glass ankles. He's always playing through injuries, and that's one of the problems. He always tried to push through injuries. But even so, I mean, I've thought about it. I mean, it makes some sense. Yeah, in theory, let's trade Taj Gibson for a really good wing player to help there. But if you can't get a really good wing player, I mean, you're not just going to trade Taj just so you can let a rookie play instead, because that makes your team worse. So, I mean, it is a tough spot to be in. And it's just like one trade that Kelly Scaletta wrote for me at today's Fast Break was he was struggling to come up with anything. He said it was like Taj for Channing Frye and Evan Fournier. I mean,
that's interesting.
It's interesting. Like
I will do that.
Evan Fournier is an interesting young player. Channing Frye can shoot threes and make some sense in the Hoiberg offense. But then again, the defense, like Channing Frye is not going to be stopping anybody, so your front court D is still screwed.
Right.
Isn't much. I mean, he's got nice potential, but I mean, I feel like maybe that makes the team better just for balancing out the roster purposes. It still could be a huge question for the defense. So it is finding a workable trade. It's easy to say, they should trade Taj for a really good wing player. Finding that trade is definitely a lot easier said than done. So it's tough.
Yeah, in Portis, too, we should talk about him since Bobby Portis rules. I almost feel guilty as a Bulls fan that the Bulls got him because it's sort of bullshit. Like, people are going to credit the Bulls with this great find.
Oh, yeah.
Portis. Oh, the Bulls strike gold again in the 20s. And they did.
Basically got a pure luck.
But, like, Bobby Portis was always awesome. There was no reason he should have went 22 overall. I ranked all the players before the draft, and caveat, I don't know anything, but I put Bobby Portis as the 12th best player in the draft. He was the SEC Player of the Year playing in Kentucky's conference.
Yeah, I mean,
Portis has mad game, and I think that
go ahead.
he can help the team this year, for sure. I really am positive he can help the team this year. I think that defensively, he's going to be good eventually, for sure, because he's got the physical tools to defend. I think it'll probably be a very steep learning curve for him this year to figure out how to defend at an NBA level. There's a lot of intricacies to that, and I think he's going to struggle with that in his rookie year. However, offensively, I mean, he can just do so much more with the ball in his hands than Noah can. His ability to hit a spot-up jumper, his ability in the pick and pop and the pick and roll, he's just a really versatile guy at 6'11", 240 pounds. Can play the 4 or the 5. He can step out. He's a great offensive rebounder so far we've seen. So I'm not saying that he needs to get like a big shift, but there's no doubt that he should be in the rotation because I think you'd be sabotaging the team not to play him.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely super tough. Like, I think he'll get minutes anyways, just because some people will get hurt. In terms, I just don't know what you do though. If all 4 guys are healthy, the 4 main guys are healthy, throw him in for a few spot minutes here or there. Maybe if he gets hot, just leave him in, stuff like that. Because we did talk about we do want to limit minutes for guys. Like, I feel like ideally, Joakim Noah is playing 25 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Pau Gasol 25 to 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
So we want to get Mirotic up to probably around there. But even then, like if you say all 4 of those guys are playing, 4 top guys are playing 25 minutes a game, that's basically the 96 front court minutes right there. So it's going to be tough to get Portis those minutes if everybody's healthy. Everybody will not be healthy because they're never all healthy. So at that point, if Portis can at least take whatever opportunities he gets in the short minutes he gets when everybody is healthy, or if some guys get hurt and he steps up, maybe he'll get more time. And if he gets hot, Hoiberg just rides him for certain games. It'll definitely be interesting to see because, as you said, Portis should not have fallen to 22. I mean, clearly, I feel like most draft sites had him as a guy that would go in the top 20, could go in the lottery. And so it's definitely pretty crazy that they were able to get him. And I know I've already watched several broadcasts, and they've talked about, oh, yeah, the Bulls scouting, they did such a great job finding Bobby Portis. Like, no, he basically just fell into the lap, and we lucked into him. So it's good that happened. We'll see if they can find those minutes for him, and hopefully he steps up and continues playing pretty well.
I got a weird Bobby Portis comp that I think is realistic, but maybe he could be better than this. I don't know. This guy's pretty good, but how do you feel about Markieff Morris is my Bobby Portis comp? Like, he can swing to the 4 or the 5. He's got a bit of a jumper.
He's bigger than him, right? Markieff is 6'9", so he's got a little size on him, right?
I thought he was 6'10" or 6'11".
I don't know, whatever. Either way, yeah. And that's not bad. I mean, definitely versatile, swing forward, could definitely play front-court spots. As long as he's not bringing trade complaints and stuff like that to the table, I can dig it.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to hit anything else for this? Oh, we should talk about Doug because, he's the preseason's breakout star, Doug McDermott, America's sweetheart. What do you got on Doug? Do you have any Doug thoughts?
Obviously, we talked about already how his defense is a major work in progress. I don't know if he'll ever be able to be that good of a defender. I mean, we saw Kyle Korver has become a passable defender. I mean, I hate to make that comp right off the bat.
It's too easy. It's too easy.
I made fun of Stacey King for making that comp, to say like they always make that comp. It is too easy. Even a guy like Dunleavy, anybody, whatever, any weak defender that has turned into a decent defender, that's basically what we're hoping out of Doug. If he can become a competent, passable defender and shoot 40% from 3 and make 2 or 3 threes a game, he brings value to the team. The fact that they gave up all that for him in a trade, you would hope for a bit more than that. Obviously, I don't know if he'll ever be that. I think he can still be helpful offensively. Kelly Scaletta wrote an article on Doug a few days ago just kind of showing what the Hoiberg offense and how that's going to help them, getting him on the move, using screens to get him open, and just stuff like that. I think, and we've kind of seen in the preseason, besides yesterday, he shot well. He's done some stuff off the dribble, and if he can do that stuff on offense, that'll help the team, even if he's still a minus defensively right now, which he most certainly is.
All right, I got some numbers for you. Doug McDermott preseason stats: 7 attempts per game from 3-point range, making 40.5% of them, and it was 43 before last night's game. Here's someone else in the league, guy who shot 8 3-point attempts per game, hit 44 of them last year. That would, of course, be Steph Curry, which is hilarious that coming into yesterday's game, Doug's preseason bullshit stats were like somewhat comparable to Curry's. But this is part of the point I want to make with Doug is I think that volume is essential for him. If he starts off the game 1 for 5, 1 for 6 from 3, do not finish 1 for 6. Try to finish 4 for 9, then 1 for 6. Yeah. Keep taking them because
that's
his
what he's
value,
bringing to the team. Yeah.
That is all he's bringing. He might not get a block or a steal or an assist the entire season because he is really limited athletically. He's just not quick. And the meniscus injury that cut into his rookie year, I do worry that sort of blurred the line for him of like, is he even an NBA level athlete? However, he can shoot the hell out of the ball. He shot over 40% from 3 all 4 years of college. He's one of the great college scorers of all time. I do think that he can make some things happen in terms of like a little floater. He showed off a bit, maybe some, some
little post game
attacking closeouts is what I'm thinking. Like, I'm not saying he's going to dunk on anyone, but he can attack a closeout, hit someone with a 1 or 2 step jumper. He has to shoot threes at a high volume and a high efficiency is the only way Doug McDermott is going to be valuable. And even at that point, the trade that brought him to the Bulls will probably still look objectively bad, but he can still help the team. And to me, at this point, that's all I care about. The trade has been made. The trade was probably not smart. However, he can still help the team if he's taken what's reasonable for Doug McDermott this year? 5 threes a game, 5.5 threes a game, make 40% of them. If he can do that, it'll help the team.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, with Dunleavy out for God knows how long, when he was talking to me today or whatever, it sure seemed like he has no idea when he's going to get back. So who knows what we can count from there. So Doug's, and with not that much else on the wing, Doug's going to be playing, you would think, 20 to 25, 30 minutes a game. And if he's getting that much time, he's got to be taking 5 or 6 threes a game. So if he's doing that and hitting, you said 40%, he did shoot 40% from 3 in college. I don't know if he can get to 40 now. That is a huge leap because he was very bad from 3 last year. Even though I think it was after the All-Star break, he shot a decent percentage from 3 on low volume, was obviously barely played. If he can get in the high 30s and he's making a couple threes a game on 5, 6 attempts, I think that will definitely help the team spread the floor. Again, create the driving lanes for Rose and Jimmy. And I completely agree with the thing about the trade. Probably not a great trade in hindsight, but he's here now. He can still help the team, and in this offense, I think his skills can at least be accentuated a bit.
I agree. All right. That's pretty much all I have. Do you have any?
Maybe. Do you want to talk? Maybe finish off on Jimmy. Do we think he can take another leap? Where do we?
Yeah. For sure. So CBS just gave their top 100 player rankings today, and Jimmy did not appear in the article, which goes up to number 20. So Jimmy, top 20 player, according to CBS. I believe he was number 18 on SI's list. Yeah, so if you look at Jimmy's numbers in the preseason, they haven't been.
He has not shot very well.
He's not shot very well, and that is what made Jimmy such a good player last year. I think Kirk Goldsberry on Grantland detailed this, but really his jumper just improved dramatically. Not even saying that he was one of the best shooters in the league by any stretch, but his jumper improved enough to just open everything else up for him, and that made all the difference in the world in his game. I don't expect Jimmy to fall off. I expect Jimmy to get a little bit better this year. I think that his defense can take a little bit of a step up, hopefully. But in the regular season, that doesn't even matter for someone like Jimmy. It's about the playoffs for him. You saw LeBron coasted throughout the season last year, and then he stepped up in the playoffs. So, can Jimmy be a top 20 player again this year? I think he can be.
Yeah, and part of what I was thinking about this was Coach Nick or whatever did a video the other day just about whatever Hoiberg and the offense, and he said that he thought that offense could possibly have Jimmy challenging James Harden as the best shooting guard in the league. I don't know if we can do that because Harden is absolutely incredible, entire offense to himself, even though his defense isn't great. But do you think it's legit to say that Jimmy, barring Klay Thompson taking another leap as well, that Jimmy's the second best shooting guard in the league?
Yeah, it's ridiculous too. We watched his whole career. It never at any point did I think this was going to happen. That second year when I think it was after January or February, he played really, really well his second year, and then he sort of took a step down his third year. But even in the midst of that second year, breakout, I was delusionally high on him, and I didn't think he would be able to be as good as he is right now. But, I really don't expect it to be a contract year thing. I don't expect it to be something where he regresses to the mean really this year. I do think that, he's talented enough, big enough, fast enough to be the player he showed that he was last year. And that's amazing for the Bulls because that really changes the entire trajectory of the team.
Yeah, he clearly has the work ethic too. Seems like he's a nut job with work ethic, which is obviously great. And obviously he takes the whole story yesterday with the whole whatever rearview mirror thing is just silly,
hilarious,
goofy. But that's the way he is. Just the guy's crazy about just getting better and not looking back or anything like that, and just looking on and improving in the future. And that's definitely a good sign for the Bulls. I don't know how much better he can get. I think his numbers could definitely improve a little bit this year, based on being in an offense that could be. Because as good as he was last year, his usage, pretty sure, wasn't very high. Yeah,
it was low.
In this offense,
he's fifth on the team.
Yeah, if he increases his usage a bit, I think his raw numbers can go up. I think his efficiency could still probably stay around the same. I know this preseason, so one of the biggest complaints about him has just been taking too many, just jacking up just jumpers off the dribble and stuff like that. And I think once they get more with the offense, just get used to it more, and he gets more playing with Rose, assuming he'll be taking better shots, and that efficiency will go back up. So, definitely feel like there's really no reason to expect Jimmy to take a step back. He could definitely, I think, get a little better. I don't know if we can expect another huge leap up into James Harden territory, but I mean, I think it wouldn't be a surprise at all if Jimmy's like the clear-cut second-best shooting guard in the league, and that's obviously huge because with we don't know what's going on with Rose. We don't know what level he'll get back to. So the fact that the Bulls do have like a bona fide, at least pretty much star player who is young that can kind of transition them if they end up moving on from Rose at some point, it's definitely really nice to have.
All right, let's close with this. The Bulls over-under in Vegas is 49.5. What do you think, Bulls, Jay? Over, under?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, they won 50 last year with a ton of dysfunction, ton of injuries again last year. So, I mean, but then you wonder, I mean, did they still win that just because Tibbs always pushed them so hard? Yeah, I'm tempted. I'm going to say under, but I think it's going to be just under. So I think they'll get to like 47 or 48. There's obviously so much talent there, but I am worried about the defense. I am worried about the injuries. So, I mean, I think they'll be very good. I think they might have their struggles at the beginning of the year, but hopefully, even if they get to whatever 47, 48, and they go under that number, hopefully they'll have meshed by the end of the year and they're playing their best basketball then, and they're just going into the playoffs riding high.
Yeah, it's funny because the Bulls fired Tibbs in part because he placed such value on the regular season.
Yeah.
That it almost seemed to de-emphasize the team's playoff success, playing every game like it's a game 7. If the Bulls struggle under Hoiberg initially, which is sort of what I'm expecting, let's say they start off 18-18 or something like that, are people, calling for Tibbs to, saying, why did we fire Tibbs? So it's just good to keep all these things in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be obviously the whole league is going to be jacking threes this year, but the Bulls in particular, they took 22 a game last year. Now they're taking over 30 a game in the preseason. It's going to be different for these guys just to learn what it's like to play without having the cane taking you off, yanking you off stage to the side every time you miss a shot. Everyone on the team has talked about freedom to play the game, and I think that that's not something we should discount. I think that Hoiberg is going to have an exciting brand of basketball for them to play. I just wonder if they can put out lineups that can both score and defend at the same time. I think they can put out lineups that defend, and they can put out lineups that can score, but can they find that combination of players that can do both at the same time? And that's the real question. So I'm going to say under 2, but not by much, so I completely agree with you. And I still think it's possible for the Bulls to be the number 2 seed in the East. The second, if they're not the number 2 seed, I think they can be the second best team in the East, which is what's more important.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. The East there's the Cavs, and obviously, and then there's a bunch of other kind of been like this recently. There's a bunch of other really good teams, and hopefully the Bulls can end up, even if they don't get the 2 seed. I mean, I'd rather avoid obviously not play the Cavs until the whatever Eastern Conference Finals. So that'd be nice, but we'll see. And I mean, would you give them any chance if both teams are healthy and playing well into the playoffs? Do you give the Bulls any chance of beating Cavs and making the finals?
I mean, no. I don't know. They have to do it.
They do have to do it. I mean, obviously, if the Cavs are playing really well, it's hard to see anybody beating them that's not in the Western Conference just because they are so loaded, and the Bulls are really talented too, but it's hard to envision beating that 300 monster, and then they have good role players as well. So, I mean, I've said this in several just people asking me, what would be your prediction? I feel like the Bulls will be a very good team again, top half of the East, and they'll probably lose to the Cavs again in the playoffs. That'd be my guess.
Should be a fun year, though. I think between the entrance of Portis, the development of Mirotic and McDermott, D Rose, I don't know, is D Rose the point guard for this franchise moving forward or not? Or is he going to be in a lame duck year next year? Do they even move him this offseason if he has a bad year? So I'm a D Rose optimist. I think D Rose bounces back pretty strong. And if he can do that and just stay on the floor, the Bulls should be pretty good. So I'm excited for this year, even though, they need to show me they can beat the Cavs before I start talking shit about the Cavs because I've done that the last 5 or 6 years and it never works out.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have no room to talk shit about them at all. They're awesome, even with their problems they have right now. I'm assuming they'll get them all. I would assume the Tristan Thompson situation, he's not going to sit out the entire year, but be kind of funny, but I'm not talking crap at all about that. So whatever. Hopefully it all goes well, and we'll cross our fingers that it's a fun year and that maybe the Bulls will surprise us in the playoffs this year.
Yeah. So does that do it? Are we done here?
Yeah, I think that was pretty good. So definitely just let's hope the Bulls can get stuff together. The season starts in a week. Bulls Cavs might not be that as exciting as we'd hoped with some of the injuries to both teams, but that it should be a fun year. Keep reading all our Bulls thoughts at blogable.com, and let's do this thing this year.
All right, later.
Later.